City of Stevens Point Plan Commission meeting, recorded July 6, 2023.
We'll call the regular Plan Commission meeting to order. Could we get a roll call, please?
Weeza.
Here.
Kneebone.
Here.
Arnson.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Rice.
Here.
And Schuler's excused. We have a quorum.
We do have a quorum. We will continue. However, before we start the meeting today, we'd like to take a moment of silence to recognize the passing of one of our commissioners. Mark Ilton passed away recently, and he was serving on our Plan Commission up until the time of his passing. So if we could just take a moment of silence, please. Thank you all very much for that. Item number 2 is the report of the June 5th Plan Commission meeting and minutes and actions. Moved by Cooper.
Second.
Second by Rice. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 2 is a public hearing and action on a request from Emily Zhang representing Norman Barber Revocable Trust for a conditional use permit to operate a one-unit residence on the property located at 2400 Church Street with the parcels identified in your packet. Adam, do you want to give us some background?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. So the image that's shown on the screen shows the location of the subject property located at the northwest corner of Church Street and Patch Street. I'll preface my remarks in saying that this is more of a administrative technicality, more so making a previous legal nonconforming use to become conforming by way of this conditional use permit. So to provide a little bit of background history on this request. So the property has historically been utilized as a vacuum repair shop on the lower level with a residence on the upper level of the building. Since the property is zoned for commercial use, technically that residential use located on the upper level would be a conditional use, and since there was no conditional use permit issued of record, that type of use has historically been considered a legal nonconforming use. Looking at previous city assessor files, it has been noted that there was a vacancy in that residential use occurring, which, as folks may know, essentially a legal nonconforming use can continue to occur. However, if there's a vacancy for a set period of time, then that legal nonconforming use would be lost, its grandfathered status would be lost, and essentially they would either prohibit that use, stop that use, or in this case, obtain a conditional use permit. So the applicant is here in person and is requesting as a condition for purchasing the property to apply for this conditional use permit to in part reside in it. Overall, staff doesn't have any concerns regarding this request. As I mentioned, the historical use the historical use of the subject property has been used for residential purposes. That type of use won't change. The building located on the subject property is already built as such to allow for a residential space, so there is not expected to be any exterior improvements done to coincide with this type of request. And then lastly, this type of really the build out of the building, the build out of the use of the property itself is pretty similar to commercial uses that are located along the Church Street corridor, commercial uses on the lower level, residential uses above. So all in all, staff would recommend approval and be happy to take any questions. And I note that the applicant is here.
Before we open up the public hearing, are there any clarifying questions from the commissioners? Yes, Mr. Rice.
Do we have, can you just maybe tell us a little bit of information about the adjacent properties to the west and south?
Yeah, so the west and south, I believe, is used more so as like a storage, a stockyard for an adjacent industrial type use. So it's kind of a quirky location.
Some self-storage units there.
Yeah.
And a lawn care place uses it for their vehicle storage and things like that.
Okay.
Two different uses there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other clarifying questions? All right, then I will declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony on this request, step to the lectern, state your name and address, and provide that testimony. Public hearing remains open. And for the third and final time, the public hearing is open. Seeing and hearing no one wishing to provide testimony, I will declare the public hearing closed. Bring it back to the commissioners. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I move to approve the conditional use request.
Thank you,
per
sir.
Staff recommendations, or conditions, yes.
Okay, we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Kneebone. Discussion.
Just a
Yes.
comment, that used to be the norm. People had their shops down below and lived above. Nice to see some of that coming back.
I saw what you did there because it was owned by Norm Barber. So yes, it used to be the norm for Norm. All right. All those in favor of the conditional use signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 4. Come on. Item number 4 is a public hearing. Now, the agenda says action, but we will not be taking action on this tonight. We'll have the public hearing, which meets the legal requirement, and we will take action, I believe, probably in August's meeting. We've had a few more things that we need input on, and we just want to make sure that we give everybody ample time to make sure that they've seen it, and they have the ability to provide input. So the public hearing will happen tonight. Action will happen at the August meeting, and that is for the City of Stevens Point to amend the City of Stevens Point Comprehensive Plan for the purpose of adding a chapter outlining a neighborhood comprehensive plan for the Gerke Park / Washington Elementary School neighborhood. Said neighborhood is roughly bounded by Maria Drive to the north, I-39 to the east, Main Street to the south, and Division to the west. Chris.
Thank you, Mayor. So the comprehensive plan update started last year, and we kicked off that update process in July of 2022 and started hosting events and workshops, informational sessions in the Gerke, Washington neighborhood from September through about April of 2023 for us to go through and document and update the comprehensive plan for the Gerke, Washington neighborhood. It was a decision by the department to go through this process for two reasons. One, to foster a bottom-up reconstruction of the comprehensive plan and to allow more resident input and relationship building over time, as well as a more sustainable process for the city staff to go through and update the comprehensive plan as updates are necessary. And so before you is roughly a 90-page document that emphasizes a lot of the planning necessary or long-term 20-year vision for the Gerke, Washington neighborhood. And that plan is before you for discussion and public hearing.
Okay. With that, I will open up the public hearing. Members of the audience who wish to provide testimony, approach the lectern, state your name and address, and provide that testimony on the comprehensive plan. This portion. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Maxwell Johnson. I live a stone's throw across the street, 2345 Jersey Street. And I've attended a number of these meetings with other residents of the Gerke, Washington neighborhood. I think it's a great project. I really enjoyed going to the meetings and playing with a little bit of Legos on a map, saying, hey, these are kind of the ideas of how we want our neighborhood to develop. I will say, sending out that mailer really got me interested, so whoever sent that mailer out, thank you. It showed up at my door, and I got involved. So yeah, I just want to voice my support, and it's been a fun process, and I look forward to the rest of the city working on this as well.
Thank you very much. Pam?
I guess I'm not quite sure why we need a 90-page plan for our neighborhood. It seems a little overdone. One of the things was everybody should live within 10 minutes of a park. Well, we have parks everywhere in our neighborhood that people go to. So if we have to add parks, why do we need to add parks? Do we have to have portable toilets in all of our parks and around the green circle? And it just seems like it's getting a little bit crazy, a little overdone. What's wrong with playing in the schoolyard? That's 10 minutes from our house. Almost everybody lives 10 minutes from Washington School. And why does it have to be 10 minutes? People can't walk anymore? I don't know. It just seems like it's overdone. Why do we need all of this stuff? People live in our neighborhood to not be bothered and to have quiet. So I just don't, maybe you can tell me, why does this need to be done? We have hairdressers, we have restaurants, we have Walgreens, we have all kinds of places within a very short walk or drive. We have a grocery store. So what is it that we need a 90-page plan for?
Thank you, Pam.
You're welcome.
And just to touch on that a little bit, I really appreciate that testimony, because that's exactly what we've been looking for. You said you want a quiet neighborhood.
Yes.
You want to be left alone.
Yes.
You want to be able to go to the parks. There's enough parks.
Yeah.
Those are all things that are playing a role in our overall comprehensive plan. Those are the things that we want to hear.
So why are we,
You have-
we have a 90-page plan?
To lay it out, just to take all that input. You have a grocery store. Would you be okay if there wasn't a grocery store in your neighborhood?
Yes.
Okay, that's input.
I've lived places where
Yeah.
I drive to the grocery store.
Yeah, and that's input. So we take the input from everybody who lives there, put those thoughts into paper, and it's not a plan that's set in stone to be implemented. It's a guiding document for the next 10, 15, 20 years. So we know that if, let's say, your idea of having enough parks is a general theme throughout the district, then if an opportunity comes up to add a park, we can say, well, neighborhood says there's enough parks, so we don't need another one, so we probably wouldn't buy it.
Right.
But if the neighborhood generally thinks that they do need porta potties, well, if an opportunity comes up, then we would probably implement some sort of restroom facility, because that's what the neighborhood wanted. That's all we're doing.
Right. At Will Park, we've lived in Stevens Point 40 years.
And Pam, I'm sorry, I got to ask you this, if you're going to, just because they can't pick it up on the video and the people watching at home.
Hello. Pam Packard, 1017 Ridge Road. Atwell Park now has a porta potty. Why? Kids have played there for 40 years without a porta potty. Why do we need one now? We have winter facilities. Are we going to start building sledding and all this stuff in the middle of Lord knows what down to the river? I don't get it.
All right. Well, thank you, Pam.
You're
The
welcome.
public hearing is still open. But you don't have to raise your hand. You can just queue up in line.
Okay, I'm here. Ray Haas,
Thank you.
3532 Regent Street, Stevens Point. I read through the whole plan, and when we talk neighborhood, and we talk being within 15 minutes or 10 minutes, or is that for wintertime? Is that for summertime? And how about us old folks? Maybe we like to drive a car to Walmart and buy stuff. Stanley Street is not going to provide businesses for me to walk to and see. I don't like the idea of putting build homes, single-family homes should be zoned single-family homes in the new area. It shouldn't be trying to combine me with college students. I can do that on my own. I don't need the government to try to huddle me into a neighborhood. My neighborhood right now depends on what group I'm in. If I'm in, it can go from Almond to Wapaka, Plover. Those are people that are in my neighborhood in one group. It can be my next door neighbors, my block, that we maybe take care of one another. So this idea of trying to group me with a zoning that 3 families can live in one house or 2 families can live in one house and try to make the neighborhood fit somebody's idea of what they want. I think it ought to be single-family dwelling around my neighborhood, and I think I should be able to plan my neighborhood, who I want to go see. I have a car. Most people have a car. We're not going back to riding bikes. My friend Jim here can't ride a bike anymore. There's going to come a day I can't ride a bike anymore, but I sure can drive a car. And so I don't need to plan for something 10 minutes walking for me. I don't think that's wise. I don't think the development plan on Stanley Street is very practical or economical. I'd hate to spend more money on that. And it's pretty crowded in there anyways. So I don't like lots of the plan, and I think it needs to go back and refigure, and I'll get more involved in the next one.
Thank you. Public hearing is still open. Go ahead.
It's low. I live on Frontenac Avenue. I've been in the neighborhood for about 20 years. And unlike the first gentleman who stepped up, haven't heard anything about this comprehensive plan. I never received any mail or any information about meetings or discussions or Legos and whatnot. This is the first I've heard about this. And I would like to ask the board here, I brought my note along. It says in your plan that this neighborhood can accommodate 238 housing units with an additional 507 residents. And my question is, does this plan have anything to do with CAP Services, once again, trying to build out in this neighborhood low-income, government-subsidized housing? Yes or no? Is CAP Services behind any of this?
Okay.
Or involved in any of this?
Okay. Thank you.
No answer?
Actually, we don't do question and answers during the public hearing. That's a legal thing. We'll write it down. We'll get to your answers, answer the questions after the public hearing.
Right. Under the previous administration, Mayor Halverson, CAP Services tried to move into the neighborhood, and that effort failed. And I suspect they're not going to just give up that easily, and they're trying to come back in. That's my suspicion. That was my
Thank you.
statement. Thank you.
Fran? Just jump in line, Dick. There's a few
Fran,
people waiting.
and I live at 2949,
I can't stand very long.
Okay, I'll get to you then, Dick.
and I live at 2949 Lamberg Ave. So this is just a comment. The only mailer that I've gotten, which, by the way, I do not live in the Gork Park area, but I have gotten one mailer, and that's it. And I've been waiting to find out what the comprehensive plan is, even though I have spoken to Keeley prior, but there's been no meetings, nothing to take part in. And even though I rent, but I still have a voice. And, so if you're going to have the comp plans, then you should involve everyone and get it moving on all the areas. Michael K. Park really has to be worked on. I mean, there are so many kids, and they have just one play gym. That's it. And the park is really nice, but you have all this open space, and you've got nothing to offer to these kids, which is crazy when I look at all these other parks, and which are nice and built up and added to, but Michael K., no.
So,
That's off of,
Fran, if I could, it's Kosciuszko Park on Minnesota Avenue. Fran's from Florida, and there are too many vowels in that name.
Yes. Oh, shush. It's just that I don't know how to pronounce that name.
Well, just take a guess.
No,
Nobody
I'm
can spell
just
it.
going to say Michael K. That's the safest way. But anyway,
Thank you,
so,
Fran.
yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's Kosciuszko Park. Hard to say, even harder to spell. Dick, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Dick Packard, 1017 Ridge. I made it 60 pages through the plan, and I always thought a plan was something you're going to do, but these are just like ideas that we're not doing anything from the plan. Maybe we should asterisk what is actually going to be done, but I guess we have to go through the process. But I read the, 60 pages and I looked at the rest. The population growth is not much, really. I like the density is something that people want, more and more people in areas that already have infrastructure, so the tax revenue goes right to the bottom line. I miss single-family zoning in this city. Am I correct in saying that is no longer a thing?
No, you are not.
Okay.
So where is?
People think it is.
Maybe.
There's a ton of data that comes from the ESRI World Mapping. And this isn't just a map that shows a road and a house. It puts all the demographic information, including, well, you got our names and addresses, includes sex, race, everything they need to know what kind of peanut butter you got on your shelf. Because it's all wired in with the internet and the invasive parts of our government and private sector. In fact, in their little tagline, ESRI has equity as their goal. Equity was always my goal, by working hard and buying a house, by working hard at a business and maybe being given some equity over time. So this ESRI, these maps that you see are way deeper than any of us can imagine. Right into your shelf and what kind of peanut butter you're eating. I guarantee you, let alone what you're saying on the internet and the text and all the other stuff. How much does ESRI cost the city every year? Write
Dick,
that
as I
down.
mentioned before, yep, we'll answer. I don't know
I'll
if we're
probably
gonna be able to
forget
give you an
it.
answer for
I'm
that
glad you're writing it down.
Well, I'm not. I pay people.
I'd like to know how much they cost. I've used them successfully in spying down on my house where my fence goes that I just had to move for $8,000 for a swale on a street that had one pothole and drank water like Moby Dick. And so I wonder, I spent $8,000 on the road, Ridge Road, to move my fence. So I worry about these things because we drive around the neighborhood all the time. It really isn't that complex. Private money will open a shop or a coffee house, like just happened. We've gone to the coffee house. What's it called?
Coffee Vault.
What?
Coffee Vault.
MEJ's Coffee Vault.
Coffee Vault, very nice.
Plug.
I liked it. So private money hopefully will come into places that are favorably zoned and take care of all that. More winter warming houses and parks and this and that, I don't know. The list, the 60 pages I made it through, I think is great, but I don't think it's a plan because the plan tells me what I'm going to do. And at some point, we will need to know what we're going to do and who the heck is going to pay for it, because the population growth isn't much. And then I look at things in there like this neighborhood is almost 50, I don't have the numbers written down or memorized, almost 50% of the neighborhood is 19 to 24? Are you kidding me? You drive around this neighborhood and everybody is old, or at least getting there. There are middle-aged people and there are youth as well, but 50%, 19 to 24? I think the university got thrown in there with all the little kids at college learning things. I got 2 notices about this. One last year to go to a nice event in the park to talk about things. I think you led that. And unfortunately, we were unable to go because we were up in Dark County. And then I've heard nothing until this letter came in, mid-May or whenever this came. I heard none of the stuff from, October through April. I didn't know anything about it. And I sort of try to I read all the city stuff that comes to me. So I got 2 notices. Somebody else never heard of it. Somebody else got 1 notice, but we miss things. We know that. People want more events. Nobody says anything about the water well on Ridge Court. Anybody know about that? 3 million gallons a day in our picture window on Ridge Court. They're putting a water well in, which is great because our city is wonderful water and they do a great job, and I'm happy to pay my water bill because the water is wonderful. But that's coming, and it affects mainly me, the guy with the fence. Bicycle routes, I don't want to talk about that. Half of them are dangerous and ridiculous. So we still have single family. I'm almost done. When you look at the ESRI maps, boy, let me tell you, it's a lot more than just where your house in the street is. Anyways, thank you. I appreciate the chance to comment.
Thanks, Dick. I did bring up the zoning map, which is available on the city website. It's probably pretty tough to read, but if you go by the colors, you can see the single families, and then you can kind of match the colors.
I looked at that.
Okay. Well, then you know we didn't get rid of single family.
No, I'm not smart enough to decipher it all.
Oh. Craig, go ahead.
Craig Tesh, living in Frontenac. Actually, a lot of the people have stolen a little bit of my thunder before I got up here. First, I'm going to agree with this lady. I didn't understand the purpose in total. Also, the other thing is that I'm wondering about here talking about having businesses and things. You know, you have business and stuff too close to where residential is, and you got a lot of traffic that's probably unwanted by the residents. Second of all, I agree with this gentleman. First of all, the only thing I ever got was this right here. It said there was a survey before. Nobody notified me. I never got anything on that at all. The other thing is that I was a little surprised. All the breakdown by everything, your age, race, income, education, occupation. I was just trying to figure, you know, it seemed like there was a fair amount of work done here, and I'm just wondering, you know, how this was all being paid for. This gentleman over here, I have to agree with him, is that it bothered me just a little bit here when it looked almost like when I read this that whoever wrote this was a little bit disturbed because there's residential, it's all residential, and you know, we could have more places, more, you know, just it was all one owner residence, and it felt like there should be more people in there or duplexes or something. For the most part, it's a residential area, and I think most of the people like it that way. I guess the only thing that I will say that I kind of would like to present, actually a couple things. I guess first of all, if there is any notification to things for anything that's done, I hope that the council will give us a little bit of heads up, especially if it's it goes before the Planning Commission, before it even gets to the Common Council. In case there's a vote or something like that, we'd like to have, input. And second of all, I will say this is that, and I'm thinking about sidewalks as an example, but the other thing is that the lighting, especially by our place there, the lighting is not good. And so if there's some way that you could go around the neighborhood, there are some places where the lighting is not good, especially when it's warmer weather like this. Maybe people would be walking at dusk or something like this, and potentially, when it's cooler, and potentially they'd like to have a little better lighting. Stubbing their toe and falling, or just anything else that might happen. I guess that's all I need to say. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. Next up.
Greg Knight, 424 Dearborn Avenue. My wife and I are recent transplants to this area, so we've only been here a couple of months. And just want to say that we're very happy to be living in the community and finding it to be a very friendly place and very walkable, and notice a lot of people riding bikes and everything, and a lot of kids running around, so that's super. That's exactly what we were looking for. We did get the notice about this hearing tonight, and we read through the plan, and I just want to say that we were very impressed and pleased with how detailed and comprehensive the plan is. You touch on a lot of topics and things that I guess our impression of it is that it does a really nice job of focusing on the character and the community as far as all of its positive attributes that it has, and how you plan to keep that out into the future and make things better. So really appreciate all the work that went into this plan. Obviously a lot of time was spent on it. I do want to address the 10-minute walk to all the parks. As a person who recently filled my prescription of Flomax, I want to say that a 10-minute rule is a good idea. So if those parks have bathrooms, I'm all for that. But
Pam, please.
Understand. A couple of things that I thought were pretty important, just looking at the map of the area and stuff. I fully support working with the town of Hull to fix some of those boundary issues with the real complex boundaries that tend to happen as community grows. So I think if there's anything you can do to simplify through annexation some of those municipal boundaries between Hull and the city, that would be a really good idea, especially for the future. And for future taxpayer expenses when you try to work out streets and utilities and all those kinds of issues. And then the second thing was noticing that you have plans for a tax incremental finance district for Stanley Street, and I just want to say I think that's what you talk about as far as redevelopment and the future of Stanley Street. We really support that too, and think you got some great ideas there. And then finally, I'll just say that it's good that it's a comprehensive plan with enough detail to describe what the vision and the issues and the ideas are for the future, so that as people that come into the community, as developers look at the community and want to invest money, they know what the expectations are, what the character of the community is, and how to complement that and not, I guess, just say, mess it up. Keep the good things that you have.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Public hearing is still open. Oh, jump right in line.
I'm LaRue. I live on 816 Lindbergh Avenue. And I would just like to express my appreciation and support for this. I was notified. I did make it to most of the meetings. It has been a very fun process, and the thing about Chris and the way that this has gone down, and with some of the other guys, Ryan, it's super collaborative, and they want your input. So everything you all have been saying tonight, that's what has taken place in those meetings. It's been very great to get to know some of my neighbors and broader neighbors that I don't know, and hear their viewpoints, even when they differ from my own. I think one of the things that I think about is empathy. My kid was a little older, so they don't need a bathroom at Atwell. There was a time not that long ago, and they did, and we needed to run home. Or there are countless stories of people peeing in the poor doctor's trees. That's not the case for me anymore, but I see the value there. I understand that people are older than I am that no longer ride a bike, and so they aren't using the bike lanes. But at one time, maybe they were. So I just think keeping that open mind, that collaborative, respectful outlook, it's been very fun. I'm happy to have been a part of it, and I hope that it moves forward. I'm glad that our neighborhood piloted this. So if you aren't in this neighborhood and you aren't aware of it, it's because we're working on this, or the city's working on this neighborhood first. So more power to you guys. I appreciate all your time and efforts. And evenings and weekends, these guys come out.
Thanks
So,
for recognizing that, too.
thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Your Honor, I think there's people ahead of me that want to speak.
All right, go ahead.
I just thought I'd find a different chair.
Is that what it was? Okay.
My name is Eric Watson, and I live at the corner of Jordan and Marianne Avenue. And the swales have been encroaching where I live, and it's like a half a block this direction. They are half a block that direction. The swales are half a block that direction from my house. There's swales and half a block that way. My intersection, when it does rain, floods, and they have 4 cisterns or something on the corner, and that thing just floods. And I just wondered, where will I find, what is the plan for that? Because I heard the DNR does not like what is in those 4 areas there. So, and in this plan, I didn't see anything about what's going to happen in that intersection, and I've been looking to see what's going to happen, because when it was raining, when I had my kayak, I could go out and kayak in the intersection for at least half a day before that would actually go down. And in the winter, when those are plugged and we got rain, our trash cans, those big things, that floated half a block away, just because people are plowing through there thinking, you see them stalled out because there's so much water there. And I don't know how you can get rid of that much water. I don't know what the solution is for that. But that's.
Thank you.
Yep.
Public hearing is still open. Oh, Fran, let's give everybody else a chance to go first for one time. Thank you. Anybody else who hasn't spoken yet? Anybody at all?
Boy, oh boy. He'll be playing here all week. Oh, for the next 4 years, in fact, he'll be playing here. Thanks.
Isn't that the unobtrusive one?
Sorry, Alderman.
Yeah, Dean Shuda, Alderman, District 8. The report is a fantastic report. I mean, it's 90 pages of detail and a lot of hard work and a lot of meetings that went into it. There are some things that I agree with. There's some things that we all will disagree about. From what I understand, it is just a plan to put down in paper so we have something going forward. And the biggest problem, and we found it in other things too, is people don't feel like they were notified and they didn't take part. I mean, there were meetings that were walkabouts that had 3 people in them. And you got the neighborhood is, 7,200 people? There were 258 non-unique people that actually participated. So there wasn't a lot of participation. So that is the problem. And when you involve change, you get fear right away. And everybody's fearful of change. A lot of people have been living in this neighborhood. I've been here close to 60 years. So change is tough. Change is difficult. you don't want to see it, and it's mostly a fear factor for the most part. So I understand where these people are coming from, but it's hard to really come up with you did the very best you could. I really believe he did. But people like where they live, and they've chosen to live there for numerous years, and they don't want to be bothered. They don't want change. So that's where the difficulty of this whole thing is. But I do want to commend a fantastic report, because it's 90 pages of everything. So I don't know where we actually go from here, because I don't know how we really can come up with definite conclusions with 258 non-unique participants with 7,200 people living there. So that's my biggest concern at this point.
Thank you, Alderman. Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Whoops. Jim Figelson, 2925 Swale Lane. We've been blessed. We live on the corner of Bilkey and Lindbergh, so we got two swales. So thank you very much. And yesterday they saw cut our driveway, so we know our exact property line. So thank you. I'm here tonight. I'm a member of Community Church on 2 Lane Stanley Street. And I wanted to tell you that we have a white piece of land on that map. And my pastor and I had a difference of opinion. He thought it was light blue, set aside for church use, and I thought it was white, set aside for housing. And when we purchased that land several years ago, everybody was happy because there would be no multiple housing in that parcel. And so we want to make sure it stays as church land and not multiple housing. And thank you for the time, and thank you members of the commission for serving, because these meetings are a hummer.
Gotcha. Thank you, sir. By the way, you left a bottle of whiskey in the upper right drawer of our desk.
Is that?
I drank it. In your former desk, you left some whiskey there.
Oh, well, it's aged.
It didn't last long. I'm teasing, of course. Again, for those of you who don't know, Jim Figelson is one of our former mayors, one of my personal favorites. We appreciate not only his service, but his continued service to the community. Andrea, you're north side.
Okay, Andrea Olson, 410 Franklin Street. I'm not in the Gerke area. I'm over on Franklin Street by the river. So I looked back at the plan that they did, I think back in 2005 for that district when they were redoing the comprehensive plan. Well, all the houses along Franklin Street, they were planning on buying them, taking them down, and creating more parks or parking for the boat launch. Well, plans change. So just like the plans have been changing for over there, your plan can also change and adapt. This isn't anything set in stone or finalized because stuff happens. So that's just something to keep in mind when looking at all of this stuff. But what I've been hearing for the most is that the city probably needs to do a planning outreach policy so that and put that as a goal within this too and across the city. So anytime a change is happening, a new build or something is going to happen based on the degree or size of that project, certain aspects of communication need to occur. So maybe it's a little small project, so they just do a posting at the city. If it's a bigger scale, mailers go out to everybody in the community or just in specific neighborhoods. But that way, no matter what, you will be contacted in these forms. So then nobody can come and say at a meeting, we weren't aware of XYZ happening, because you had to follow that set policy because that's the policy. It'll take a little while to get going, but it can create flow and prevent many lacks of communication that have occurred or claims of it. But also with The swales, talked to Plover about swales. They started going in a long time ago and they flood, and you can talk to 4th Avenue about flooding too because they were kayaking, but luckily the city redid the sewers over there, so it's getting better. So if your swales are really bad or they're putting them in, you complain enough, they'll probably get better too.
Andrea, I apologize for the interruption, but
okay.
please address the
Yeah.
commission.
The one thing that I'm concerned about is that I don't like any more TIF districts being created if that's going to be occurring, because we're already giving tons and tons of tax breaks to these big corporations or investors for putting up more apartment complexes or more large-scale retail when we really don't even have the population to be staffing those places. So if you look at the one that's going in across from Fleet Farm over there, they're going to be looking for employees. You stated that their college students are going to want to work for them, but if you look at the demographics of our college students and the pay and having them go way out there to work and the type of what those businesses support, the likelihood of those people going there to work isn't that high. So if we're going to be investing in the community, we really should be investing in developing spaces that are affordable for rent for smaller businesses so that they can actually be supporting our community. But also, I do like that there's going to be more, hopefully more affordable housing, because that is one of the big goals of the community, and that's how you get college students to stay in the area and bring families in. When we don't have enough single-family homes, and most people around here enjoy having their single-family home, they leave when they can't find housing. And that's something we need to keep talented people here or get them to move to the area.
Thank you. Public hearing is still open.
My name is Meredith Hess, and I live at 316 St. Paul Street. And we did receive that letter, but we were so vague on it, we did not have a good understanding, and which is, this meeting has been very beneficial for us, me especially. But I spoke to some of the people in our neighborhood, and they all said, that letter we got is so vague, we don't get it. And I guess for maybe some of us who didn't get it in our heads, maybe an explanation of a comprehensive plan would have been more beneficial to some of us. And then my only other thought was this 90-page report, did you have to go online for that, I'm assuming? Or where would we have read that?
It's posted online. You can get hard copies as well.
Okay, because I guess we had not seen that. In the letter, we went to the website there, whatever was offered, and maybe we missed a step, but we did not see a 90-page report. Yeah. But with that being said, that was our little bit of confusion. This has been very good to hear people's thoughts on this whole plan. And I always think it's good to have people who working so hard at these things know that people do appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Public hearing is still open. Public hearing remains open. And for the third and final time, Fran, do you got something else to say? Perhaps, go ahead.
So, I just want to say that as far as District 10 goes, it would be nice to have a lot more focus.
Fran, we're not talking about District 10 tonight, I'm sorry.
I know that, but my point is, Mike, is that, you know, with everything that's going on, if Keeley would just be forthcoming.
Alderperson Fischler.
Okay.
Just, people don't know who Keeley is.
Okay.
Or maybe don't. Maybe they do.
Alderperson Keeley Fisher. Yeah, so, and Chris, I mean, if we could have more meetings, you know, and people getting more involved, maybe we could get things done. But this area that I live in, I'm beginning to question why I even moved here, because it's, I mean, even though the roads are getting done slowly.
Fran, we really are not talking about District 10. We will
I
take
know,
those
I
things
know.
into account, and when District 10 happens, I'll make sure you get a personal letter. Write it down.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Fran. Public hearing is still open. Public hearing remains open. Sure, Craig, come on up again.
Same guy, same address. The reason that I came back up here is because whenever somebody gets something from government, the first thing to think of is, boy, when we're all over, it's going to be worse instead of better, overall. So if you can improve things without taking away from the stuff that's good, I think everybody here would be for it. Okay?
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that, because, you know.
We try to do that. Keep the good stuff, get rid of the bad
That's how
stuff.
everybody feels.
Yep. Thanks, Craig. Public hearing is still open. Round 2.
I came up first, and I might be the last one. I came to say support for this because I participated in 2 meetings. The second meeting was kind of just an overview of what we actually did. But as somebody who came here as a college student, stayed for 5 years in college, a little extra time, and then moved into the neighborhood, I want to see more walkable businesses on this side of town. I have to cross Division, and I primarily bike there. I do have a car, but I don't like to drive it, and I have a scooter, but I want to save on gas, so I primarily bike most places around town. I just biked to the Portage County Library this morning, or this afternoon. And I want to be able to go over to a coffee shop nearby that's closer. I know the Coffee Vault has just opened. I haven't been there yet, and that's just out of the Neighborhood Improvement District. But yeah, I think Stanley Street is a great corridor for more businesses and more housing around that area. And I'm just excited for more neighborhoods to actually see this plan come to fruition, maybe with a little bit more communication. While I may have gotten them, communication is of utmost importance to most of the residents. So I just wanted to come and say that again because I know it was just a broad support. Oh, excuse me, broad support earlier. But yeah.
Thank you. Public hearing is still open. Public hearing remains open. And if I say it quick enough, the public hearing is still open for the 3rd time. Seeing no one else wishing to speak, I will declare the public hearing closed. While Director Karnowski goes through the questions to formulate them, I want to talk about a few things. Chris, how many meetings did we have?
We had
whatever form.
We had 6 public meeting sessions after our kickoff block party.
And how were those meetings advertised?
So we compiled an initial contact list from a citywide survey that had been sent out last summer. We had been contacting that list of residents throughout this process via email. We had also mailed out notices for 2 additional sessions, 2 additional workshops to the residences using the same mailing list.
Which residences? All of the addresses?
All of the addresses within the Gerke, Washington
Within
neighborhood.
that district. So 2
which
letters.
Is the same list that was used for the public hearing notice for tonight.
Okay, all right. So show of hands, how many people outside of tonight attended one or more of any of those meetings? Okay, so good. We've got a pretty good 50-50 maybe a little less than 50%. Normally, when we do a comprehensive plan, we hold meetings like this. Some of the feedback was, it's kind of stuffy, it's kind of formal, some people are intimidated, maybe they're not sure what we're talking about, so they don't want to come. So we tried something new this time, and that was having smaller, less formal type meetings, get-togethers. neighborhood parties. Some were a little more formal, some were playing with Legos. Trying to get people involved, because one of the things that I've learned is we can be talking about something, I don't know, let's say Stanley Street, for 2 years, and nobody says anything until the day of the vote. That's the worst time to provide input. So we're trying to get people more involved earlier in the process. And this was one of those ways. Now, we have a city website that you can actually get push notifications. If you want to know the Plan Commission agendas, we'll send them to you. You don't even have to go look them up. We'll send them to you. We have a TV station that frequently broadcasts our meetings, our agendas, community calendars, points of information, news articles. The city radio station that does the same sorts of things that the TV station does. We have alderpersons who are in varying degrees of involvement. Some go door to door every year and talk to every single resident. We do all sorts of media interviews. We have the media here tonight. So we do a really good job, I think, of trying to get the word out, but we're always looking for improvements. So 6 meetings that were advertised, at least 2 letters went to every household in the district. If we can make letters, you shake your head no, but I can prove that it went out. Maybe you didn't get it. Well, maybe you didn't get the other one, but we sent out 2 letters. And I don't know how we can, I mean, short of like subpoenas and putting them right in your hand.
When did you send these 2 letters?
Chris, do you have those dates?
There were 2 letters. There were also 2 postcards that were sent, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
As part of it.
Yeah.
Do you have the dates at all?
Yeah, we can get the date.
We don't have them now, though. So, Dick, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to continue on with what I was going to say, and that's trying to get people involved is challenging. So we're always looking for ways to improve. If there is something we can do better, please let us know. I like the idea. Maybe the letter was a little cryptic because we all know what comprehensive plans are in the whole process, but the general population, we sometimes forget that what we deal with on a day-to-day basis is not something everybody else deals with. So we have a tendency to use jargon or industry language that may not be clear to everyone. So that's one great thing to take away from this. All of the input that was provided here tonight, Ryan was making a ton of notes that we can now incorporate into that. This is one of the reasons we didn't want to take action tonight. So we have time to review all of that and provide another month for people who may be watching tonight or friends that you talk to provide that input so we can have a good comprehensive plan. One of the things that I noticed, and Mr. Packard brought it up, it goes from Division Street all the way to I-39. So yeah, it does include the college. The university or campus core probably has a whole lot different values and wants and needs than the Ridge Road section. So maybe we need to split it up smaller, and we'll take that into consideration as well. But I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight, because that is really what we're going for. Good or bad, critical or not, we want your involvement, because this isn't my plan, this isn't our comprehensive plan, this is everyone's. This is your neighborhood that we're talking about. And when we say plan, we hope that these things will be implemented. My plan is to retire on a private island, sipping drinks out of a coconut, with my lovely wife polishing our boat. That's not going to happen, but it's a goal. I'd put it in my plan. In all likelihood, she's just going to snuff me out with a pillow one night. Kidding. But that's what I mean. So it's not a step-by-step, these are the things we must do. It's a concept. And it's designed to get the goals of where the neighborhood hopes to be. If opportunities come up, we'll act on those based on the plan. But if the opportunity doesn't come up, maybe the plan changes. Maybe we don't buy every house on Franklin Street and turn it into a parking lot, which was never the plan, by the way. Some of it was. We needed additional parking down there. We still do. But that plan will morph over the next 10 or 15 years. So it's not something that's set in stone. It's not something that we are absolutely going to do. But I just want to make sure that people understand that. And thank you again for coming out. If you have suggestions on how we can better communicate, please send those to my office. stop in, call me, email me, throw a rock through the window, preferably when I'm not there, because I want to hear that part of it. Now, Ryan, we had a bunch of questions. You want to go over those?
Sure. Before I get to some of the questions, I think Meredith asked a really good question. What is comprehensive planning? And I'll just give a quick overview.
Good luck.
So the city has had a comprehensive plan in place since 1965. That was the city's first comprehensive plan. It was updated in the late 80s, 1988, and then it was updated again in 2004 and 2005. And really, it's a state mandated plan. The state of Wisconsin says, in order for you to implement zoning, which is what we have, you have to have a comprehensive plan. And that comprehensive plan has to include almost everything the city does as it relates to anything below ground, above ground, physical development, road planning, transit planning, utility plan, everything is within the plan. As I mentioned earlier, our most recent plan is from 2005. The state of Wisconsin mandates that we update every 10 years. We've tried to update the entire city plan 2 or 3 times. Since then, it's never taken off. So city staff said, well, let's take a different approach. Let's get buy-in. Has anyone here ever read the 2005 plan? Andrea, it's a very dated plan. It needs a lot of help. It needs to be completely changed and adjusted. And instead of doing a citywide plan, we thought, what better way to get more buy-in than to do some neighborhood-focused planning? And when I say neighborhood, it's a pretty broad stroke, right? I happen to live on the east side of this neighborhood. I don't necessarily agree that, the university area is part of my neighborhood, but from a 30,000-foot view, and just on paper, it makes sense to have this in one plan. And as the mayor mentioned, the needs near UWSP's campus and Ridge Road are completely different. But we try to incorporate all these things to make a really comprehensive plan that the neighborhood can buy into. So, as the mayor mentioned, this isn't set in stone. Nobody's changing your zoning. We are not getting rid of single-family zoning. There's nothing within the document that states that, and I'm more than happy to have that discussion with anyone afterwards. But what it does is it provides us a footprint. What do we want the Gerke Washington neighborhood to look like in the next 20 years? Do we want Stanley Street to be redeveloped into something that's a little bit more walkable, maybe 2-story buildings, 2 or 3-story buildings with apartments? Do we want to implement a TIF district to encourage that type of redevelopment? Do we want to keep more, I'll call, vehicular-centric businesses near the I-39 corridor? Those are all the things that we talk about here. And really what it comes down to is, it's an idea, it's a vision. But as the mayor mentioned, it's only implementable if people buy into the plan. And we've done a number of public hearings, not public hearings, but public involvement sessions. We have tried to send everybody postcards. A few of you sent us some really nice postcards back saying, don't ever send this to me again. But I think that's really what we want. And to address some of the questions, we wanted to make sure that this plan was specific enough where we could have buy-in and specific action items to ensure that the neighborhood felt as though it wasn't just a plan that gets implemented or gets adopted and gets put on a shelf or is a really good paperweight, which is essentially what our 2005 comprehensive plan is. So that's why it's a pretty in-depth document. And a lot of the information Mr. Packard brought up from Esri, that's actually based all on U.S. Census data. And so this neighborhood, I think, has 4 or 5 census blocks, and it's all self-reported. So we took the self-reporting, applied it to this plan itself, and that's why you see incomes, employment, sexual orientation, things of that nature within it. So we don't know what kind of peanut butter you have. You look like a crunch you got to me, but I don't know. We can figure that out later.
Skippy Smooth.
Skippy Smooth, all right. And just, for Fran, we do intend to do other neighborhoods over the next few years. So this will morph into one big plan. This is just one chapter of what will be that larger comprehensive plan for the entire city. That'll be accessible on the city's website and in our GIS files. And so everyone will be able to look at this and consider it as they decide to move to a neighborhood or try to implement aspects of the plan. Mr. Tesh brought up some traffic concerns. You know, as you add density and as you add businesses, yeah, you're going to have more traffic, and that's what comprehensive plans try to address. If you have too much traffic, it causes a detriment to the neighborhood. We try to keep all the traffic on arterial roads or collector streets, and that's why we don't have, you know, massive business redevelopment on Green Avenue or on Michigan or on Lindbergh, and instead it's more focused on the Stanley Street corridor and the Division Street area, those that are already more commercialized. It's just how do you make those commercial districts a little bit better through redevelopment efforts. A couple more. Mr. Watson asked some questions on the dry wells on Jordan and Marianne. Correct, the DNR does not allow dry wells anymore, so as roads get reconstructed within this neighborhood, we do take dry wells out and we replace them with swales. That is an acceptable standard practice within our streets and utilities department, but if you have more questions on that, we can definitely get Mr. Lemke to have a conversation with you as it relates to stormwater management.
The swales are going to handle the volume.
Sure. Okay.
Yep, they can explain all that to you. Contact the water and wastewater department.
There was a question on the future land use of the community church. So it's currently marked as vacant. And the future land use does identify it as low-density residential, so mainly single-family residential. That's what its current future land use is as well. I think it's really important to note that the future land use map isn't mandating that you do something with it. If you ever wanted to, let's say, build a car sales lot on that vacant lot, the comp plan would say, oh, time out, community church, you cannot do that because the future land use is single family, essentially. So, like I said, we're not changing anyone's zoning, it's just identifying what specific land uses or generalized land uses will be for specific parcels within the city to prevent conflicts of land use.
Thank you.
Yep. I think I hit all the questions.
Did we miss any questions? Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, CAP services.
CAP thing, yep.
CAP specifically wasn't involved in this, so I'm not certain. I wasn't here when Mr. Halverson was mayor. I don't know the history there, but I can tell you that, you know, we do encourage neighborhoods to be as diverse as possible. There are a lot of homes, like around the university, that are former college student housing that is now turning into more affordable or lower income housing. It's just the nature of transitional housing like that. Not transitional housing, transitions in housing, the housing stock itself. So, but no, specifically as it relates to CAP services, they were not necessarily involved in the planning aspect.
Do you have a new question, Dick?
No, I just want my question answered.
Which one?
Or direct in the right way. How much does ESRI
Oh, that's right.
cost, say the amount a year?
I don't have the specific dollar amount, but I can sure get it to you. Our GIS information, yeah. Our GIS, Global Information Systems team, our technician in the utility.
I'll get that number for you,
Yeah,
Dick.
we can get that to you.
Remind me tomorrow to talk to Corey and see what the bill's been, and then I'll email you or something.
Can I ask another question?
Oh, sure, why not?
I've been told that the Ridge Road,
Dick, I'm sorry. They can't hear you on the microphones for the recording.
Oh.
I know it's a pain in the butt for you, and I apologize.
I don't know if it's a legitimate question or not.
Every question is legitimate.
Not all the time.
Well, they, I guess you're right.
I guess this affects our neighborhood. We just had Ridge Road, the south half, done. Beautiful road, it's great. Swales will probably do a wonderful job. But if anybody believes that road was done for $700,000, holy cow. So I want to know how much the road cost Stevens Point, Wisconsin, the federal government, because I sat out there with the bulldozers and the backhoes and everything. In fact, I was such friends with the bulldozer operator, he gave me the CAT website, and I now have a CAT t-shirt. But to think that project cost $700,000, and I heard it from multiple people, from Joe, who's a great guy, to other people, 700, baloney.
Well, I don't know what number you were told, but we have no reason to lie about that. That's all public record. So I'll get that information for you too. Write that down so I can get that back to him. All right, so anybody else had questions that we didn't answer?
Just have a
Okay,
comment.
hang on one second.
Sure.
All right, I will, did I declare the public hearing closed already?
Yes.
I did? All right, then we're good. Alderperson Nebo. Sorry, I'm getting confused now.
I see Andrea's companion animal there. Is Andrea still there? In defense
She is.
of District 7 and all the way out there where I live, it's only a 7-minute drive from my house behind Holiday Inn to downtown Stevens Point. It is not all the way out there, and it's a great part of town. Come on out and visit.
Oh, one other thing I want to touch on. The 10-minute walk to the park, that was my, Andrea,
That means, but I took it as an insult, so.
No, you said about the stuff
if you got
that's going
something to say,
on in the
you get
old,
up here.
at the old cops site. It's only a 7-minute drive. It's not all the way out there.
right.
It's not intended to be an insult. It's
All right.
supposed to be a joke.
the 10-minute walk to the park, that was my idea. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I saw the signal. I will wrap it up. But I think it's a cool thing, right? I think people should have the accessibility to a park. If you want to drive to a park, great. But not everybody drives. So did Emily. That's part of my comprehensive plan, Dick. I don't know if it's going to happen, but might be able to eat at like Olive Garden. All right, so no action tonight. Commissioners, did anybody have anything to add? All right, so we're hoping for action on this next month. Go to our website, Google or type in the search bar, comprehensive plan. That's what I did. You'll have information there. If you want a hard copy, they're available in our packet. You can print those off from online. If you don't have a printer, contact our community development department. We will give you a hard copy. We want to make sure that people are involved. So one last question from my own personal knowledge. How did everybody show up at the meeting? What prompted you? Was it the letter that you got? Letter. Okay, so respond to letters. Good. That's a good thing. We're going to try and do a better job. I was just curious if there was some other avenue that we could have got information out, that like a phone tree or something that you. I don't know. I'm looking for ways to improve. That's it. Thank you all very much for coming tonight. Expect action next month. Normal Plan Commission meets on the first Monday of every month. If it's a holiday, things change, but next month we're good. So it'll be the first Monday in August, 6 o'clock, right here. Same bat time, same bat channel. What's that?
I said it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now I got to kick off my screensaver again. Sorry, took too long. All right, next up is a request from Kelsey Hayes, who has been sitting very patiently on our Zoom session representing Ross Dress for Less, for a sign variance to install one wall sign exceeding the maximum size restrictions on a property located at 5601 Highway 10 East, way out there, consistent with Chapter 25.14. Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. The request before you all tonight is to install one wall sign at a size of approximately 314 square feet. Before I kick it off and talk a little bit about the zoning, about the variance process, I want to talk a little bit about really what our sign code allows and does not allow as it relates to wall signage. So typically what's allowed for wall signage more or less depends on if a business is a standalone business on a property, or if it's say more of like a strip center type development where there's more than one tenant located within a building. If it's the former, the standalone building, they're allowed essentially 1 square foot of wall sign per 1 foot of street frontage that property provides. If it's the latter, in the case like this request, each tenant is allowed a maximum of 1 wall sign at a size not to exceed 100 square feet. So going off or kicking off the variance process discussion. I'm sure you all know as a commission, really what's the three main standards you look at for reviewing a variance request. One, is there a necessary hardship present? Two, is the hardship that's being claimed due to unique physical limitations of the property? And then third, what's going to be the impact of the proposed variance as it relates to the broader neighborhood? So the staff report goes into detail covering those three big variance standards. And ultimately, staff's conclusion is that we do agree that the proposed sign won't have a negative detriment on the surrounding neighborhood. Surrounding area is zoned and utilized for more higher density commercial retail development. We do, however, believe that a hardship is not present and that the hardship that's being claimed, that's found within the agenda packet, is not due to specific situations or unique situations of the property. The subject property actually was split to what its current iteration is now about a year ago. That was something where city staff was working with the developer for the old Walmart, Old Cop site. So, we can say that the subject property meets those primary standards for the B5 Highway Commercial District, your setbacks, your lot size, your lot width, things like that. So ultimately, staff would recommend the denial of the sign variance request. As the mayor mentioned, the applicant is on the call, and either one of us would be happy to take questions as well.
All right, before we go too much further, I just have to make something known because it was so obvious that all of the people that wanted to get involved all of a sudden no longer want to get involved. And the room cleared out. We've got the annual report, the home occupation ordinance, and the room cleared out. So I appreciate there being an involvement for a little bit, but there's a lot of involvement that I think is important, and we need people here so we can get that feedback. Anyway, commissioners, the recommendation by staff is to deny the variance. Commissioner Rice, then Cooper.
Are you looking for a motion, or is there a public hearing on this?
There is no public hearing on this, no.
I guess I'm inclined to move approval of the sign variance.
Approval of the sign variance?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a second to approve the sign variance?
I will second that motion.
Okay, seconded by Cooper. Discussion on approving the sign variance.
Yeah, I guess I'll explain at least my initial logic, and if I'm incorrect, welcome any additional feedback. This store is going adjacent or nearby the Dunham's location, is that correct?
Correct. Same
which would have also received a similar sign variance, I expect. I mean, just based on the photos here, looks like their sign is, of similar proportion, I would guess exceeds the 100 square feet limitation. Do we know if they currently have, would they have received a conditional use or sign variance?
There's no record saying that a sign variance was ever obtained, so my hunch was we had different code requirements at that time.
Sure. I guess, assuming the similarity in size and scope of the building, signage, et cetera, the similarity to this kind of strip mall setup, for lack of a better phrase, to other similar kind of retail areas within the city, I guess I don't see significant detriment from having this sign kind of as proposed.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Commissioner Cooper.
I was leading into that myself, is do we know of variances the city has granted out there? And the reason I ask is because, okay, we've got a request for 314 square feet. The standard is 100. That's highway commercial. It's way off the highway. It's set back quite a ways. Is there a number that is acceptable? Because I don't think 100 square feet is enough for where that is, and being a highway commercial. That's why I seconded the motion, but that's kind of what I'm wondering is what's acceptable is, can we work with the applicant? Because I think maybe 100's too small. 314 square feet, I guess I can't visualize that. I don't know what that.
The answer mainly to that question is you're just going to have variance after variance in this redevelopment. Typically, we do like to see sign packages put together, which is allowable within our sign code for whichever reason the developer didn't pursue the sign package application process itself. So that would be, I think, staff's only real concern is you're just going to see this type of variance for this area come through pretty regularly. I think it's probably worthwhile for us to crack open the sign code again and start looking at, what's a reasonable standard, especially for a property like this that's set far off the Highway 10 corridor itself. So that would be my only concern is we'll just see variance and variance and variance.
I would hate to set a precedent that could cause a problem. I agree.
Can you explain that sign package process further? So the developer would just basically submit the full suite of signage in basically a single iteration?
Yeah, and then this body would have oversight authority over that. And that's where things like, level of reasonableness would come into play.
Sure.
So.
Is that generally more standard practice when we've got kind of multiple units owned by a single developer or being developed on a similar timeline?
It's a preferred option for us, and you see it a lot more with strip-style development like this, where you do have a package that comes through it, and typically you have, for lack of a better term, protective covenants that also regulate, how big signage can be, and they kind of regulate themselves, and the city just has some oversight authority. But again, the denial just comes from the concern that we're just going to have a lot of this type of request coming through.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's logical. Not something that I was aware of. If there is a process in place for us, for you, city staff, to make kind of more thorough wholesale recommendations on a larger scale and add efficiencies to that process, I agree with that as well.
Any other comments from the commissioners?
Not knowing how many places are going to be out there and what kinds of signs there are going to be, it could be just a really ugly hodgepodge of whatever the owner decides is going to fit on their building. I think maybe 100 square feet is too small. I'm going to vote no, because I think we need to be a little bit more standard out there as this develops out. It's huge. It's a huge development for our neighborhood, and I don't want it to end up looking really junky like some of the things we see in other parts of the state. And again, I would be concerned if we give this one, then what's the next one going to say? Is Five Below going to come and say, oh, we want a bigger one than they got? And then the guy down. So if we allow them to come back and work with the staff, maybe figure out a little bit bigger signage, I wouldn't be opposed to that. At least it gives them a little bit of play to work with. So it's kind
So
of.
let me throw a proposal out there, because it sounds like we are in agreement that in some cases, especially something like this, where it's set far enough back off the highway where 100 feet, you're probably not going to be able to read it, especially with my eyes. But we do seem to feel that somewhere out there is a number that could work. In this case, I think they're ready to begin construction, so I don't think they can wait a couple of months. But if there was a number that someone had in mind, maybe it's 300 square feet. They could scale this sign down a few feet. And if 300 was a number that the Plan Commission was comfortable with, we could grant the variance for 300 square feet, or 250 or 200, and then ask staff to revisit the sign code, plugging that number in, passing it, and then hopefully avoid at least some of those future requests, if that's a number you're comfortable with.
In terms of visibility, they'll have visibility on that very large sign that will indicate all the businesses, like they do at most of those places. As soon as you turn right onto Brulesky, going east on 10, you'll see the sign. As soon as you go past, well, now that Applebee's is gone, you can see it from Highway 10, except where McDonald's is. Coming into town from 10 going west, you'll be able to see it back in there as well. Maybe 200 square feet? 300 seems a little big yet, but, because I don't think visibility is going to be that much of an issue. As this builds out, people will be driving in, and they'll be seeing the signs and seeing what's out there, and word will spread, and I don't think it's going to be a hindrance.
We do have the applicant online. Applicant, did you want to comment?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I can put this to Katie as well with Blair on, thoughts about scaling. The sign, I guess, just to answer a couple of your kind of questions and comments that you had already, the freestanding sign that all the tenants are on is, to my understanding, I believe, off to the side on that property. It's not right, trying to think where it's sitting now that I'm thinking about it. The building itself is set back, which is why they provided a larger, square footage on the sign on the front of the building, which we went over. If there's a way to, work with it, just because if you can picture, and if we can pull back up that front of that building, shrinking that down to, essentially you're going to a third of the size, not even, you're really not even utilizing the space of the fascia on that building for the signage itself, and then readability becomes actually drastically challenging when you shrink down from, the letter height of 70 inches and 42 inches down to 36 and 24. So I understand you're going to have people, driving in the lot, but part of the draw is trying to get them into that area as well. We definitely don't want it to pose, an area that is matted with signage that, it looks tacky by any means. That's why it's scaled to the fascia of the building in order to fit that space on the building. And that's why it was laid out that way versus, something that was obnoxiously bigger, or again, too small where it just looked ridiculously minuscule on the front of that building.
Okay, thank you. Comments from the audience? Go ahead. No, we got to go up to the lectern, please. It's just for the people at home who are watching.
right.
They don't pick it up anywhere
I'm
else.
Pam, Ridge Road, 1017. It seems that nobody's considering the front of the building, how big it is. Shouldn't you take that into account? A proportional sign? If you had that on a building that was 100 feet wide, well, yeah, 300 feet is too big. Looks like a pretty big building, pretty tall, and they probably have that so that they can have their sign. They may completely redesign the front of their building if they can only have 24-inch letters. I mean, don't you think that's a consideration? Should be proportional to the building?
Pam, playing devil's advocate here,
Yeah.
if I wanted to open up a fireworks stand, I would have my 10 by 10 tent and a 500-foot sign. So I could have fireworks in the biggest letters possible if we go by that proportional of the facade. So that doesn't work in every case.
But that's a separate sign. That's not actually part of the concrete building.
So I'll build the facade 300 feet tall.
Well, have you looked at fireworks stands? They have pretty big signs.
I really haven't. But you know what I'm saying? If someone wanted to, if we went just by proportion of the facade, you could make your facade huge to have a big, massive sign, but a small store. Like, I can tell you that the space above there, that's not occupiable space.
Oh, I know that.
So it's just made to be bigger, so it's more prominent.
I know that.
So-
But aren't you glad that somebody even comes to Stevens Point?
Not every day.
Not really?
Not every day.
Not every day.
There are things that we probably wouldn't welcome as much.
Well, this is a dress store.
Yeah.
It's not like it's...
Oh, this isn't one of them, that's for sure.
Right. Yeah. There are undesirable businesses that you don't want signage of.
Go ahead, Dick.
Or you can just tell me.
Could I add to that point?
Go ahead, Kelsey.
So based on, because I've attended, several of these variance meetings and just done, completed signage in multiple municipalities, and I've seen sign ordinances go a variety of ways. I've seen them get adjusted, etc. And I have seen a lot of them take, for example, say a percentage or a linear footage of the building and then apply that to their code. So if the building is, say they get 1 square foot per linear foot of the building, or some municipalities like Appleton, for example, will take a percentage of the front of the facade that the sign is going on, and that's how much square footage you get. For example, say 10% of that entire square footage of the front of the building, that's what you get in square footage for signage. Now, I've also seen them go beyond that point to just go beyond that, where they say 10%, but not to exceed whatever square footage. So I guess I'm just also kind of playing devil's advocate in that point, that I understand what you're saying, where, well, then anyone could just build a giant building and slap a giant sign on it. But the code can be written in such where, it's still tasteful. It can be written in that, say it's 10% of the building or 20% or whatever the scenario is, but then not to exceed 300 square feet or 250 or something like that.
Great. No, those are great ideas. And just as a point of reference, your linear footage looks to be about 125 feet in the front. So that'd be, any of those formulas are possible. However, none of them are currently our ordinance. So you have to deal with what we have currently. If we want to change it, that's fine, and we can deny this, change it, they can reapply. So that's what I'm getting at. If you want to grant the variance and you think the ordinance should be changed, well, then we should probably throw a number out there today. But if you don't think the ordinance should be changed and it's adequate, then I think you should consider staff recommendations.
So one follow-up for city staff, I guess you touched on it, Mayor, is kind of time of the essence here for this decision in this business, or do we feel like the other, I forget the phrase you used, but kind of the full-scale sign suite application process, does that seem practical in this case?
So timing is never a consideration when variances are being granted. It's just a bad rule of thumb, bad policy. I'm not an advocate for making policy on the fly. So I think my recommendation to the body would be either approve or deny it, and staff will work on updating our sign variance process. The recommendation is denial, but it's within your purview to make a recommendation to council to approve, if that's what you so choose.
And that is what we have on the floor. Any other comments from the audience? Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot you went up there. Mr. Packard.
I think it's fantastic, the sign. Is that new construction?
This will be, right?
The facade is new, but it's renovation of the old Walmart building.
Oh, it's the old Walmart, yeah. Okay, so a lot of it is old, but they put a lot of design effort into it. And I used to be a graphic designer, sold stuff to Mike.
Yes,
and done a lot of stuff like this, trade show signs. That's perfectly fine. But let me make a comment about your 100 square foot rule. From what distance is your 100 square feet? 10 feet, 12 feet, across a normal, small lot on a commercial thoroughfare? Because this can be calculated by aspect ratio. You can say, okay, our 100-foot thing is good here from 35 feet. That's how far back?
Not off the top of my head.
Probably 190 feet, 200 feet?
It's probably a little more than that.
So the computer, you turn the crank on the computer and out comes, wow, it could probably be 700 feet. It's over 700 feet deep?
From the highway.
So you're 100 foot at a very great distance. That sign might be able to be 500. And it would be the same aspect ratio. So you can go back and calculate, and the first question you should ask yourself is at what distance the 100 square foot sign built for.
Thank you.
Is that my invitation to leave?
Unless you have something else.
No, it's a lovely building. I would vote yes if I could.
Alderperson Shuda.
Having been a business person here in town, the sign is so very important. And with it being 700 feet, you know, you go to other towns with Ross and so forth, and you're gonna approve the variances. I mean, even if there's 10 of them in that area, so what, you address 10 of them. If you end up wanting to do the sign ordinance different, that's fine, but that's a nice sign. It's not ugly by any means. It's not going to start ugliness on the east side by any means. And when you're driving past McDonald's and stuff like that, if my wife looks to the left, she's got to see that sign. And we've done that in other cities. When they're big like that, we pull in, unfortunately. But I would really consider passing this one if I were you.
Thank you. Kelsey, let me ask you something. Would you be receptive to doing the sign suite option like Director Kanowski talked about?
So working with Court of Development on this, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, I worked with Corey actually, on this property a little bit, and I think the only reason they didn't go that route is because I'm guessing there was still kind of contracts going through and nothing was actually, I don't want to say finalized, because I'm sure in his, thought process and his plan it was finalized, but you never want to start planning for other people's signage and, handle the responsibility of it without, having that commitment or having them be involved. And I'm guessing that's the only reason why he didn't do that in the first place. Now, I have no problem being a part of that process, to make sure that everyone gets that, equal signage. Yeah, so I guess I would be open to that.
All right, thank you. Andrea?
Unless you're going to be changing the ordinances, I don't think that this should be passed, because if you look at places, I think it was Mequon, where you have to have, when you're going down there, your buildings actually have to all look very similar. And many places have the signage on the buildings regulated, so it can only be a specific size. And then by the street, you can have that larger sign with all the businesses on there. So it's each city or each area does their own thing. So unless this is going to be okay for everybody, which it's going to have to be if this is okayed, vote no unless you want to do the change, really, and have all places with signs like this.
Thank you. Alderperson Lang.
We have 115, page 115 brought up on that agenda.
Oh, of the agenda. I'm not sharing the agenda, I'm sorry. Hang on, I gotta grab it now.
The bottom of it.
Why? Killing me, Smalls. You are being 115,
115.
right?
I believe it's 115. Is their application.
Farther up, yeah.
Why?
There.
Oh, no. There.
Okay. So if you look down there at the bottom of this page, they cite that it is a visual thing that they're talking about, saying this is the reason they need this variance. The accommodation is because they're so far back from Highway 10. And if you're familiar with that, it's a ways back there off of 10 to where Dunham's is. And if your store is closer to the main traffic where people can see it, it makes sense where it's like, no, this isn't for you, but they're way, way back there. And you can't read little letters. And that's about it. What do they cite there? What's the words?
What are you talking about, the readability?
Yes. They're saying parking lot property visibility. It's the visibility is what they're talking about, is the main hardship is audience visibility. That's what they're saying is the undue hardship that they'd be experiencing. And I could see a little bit of that where people have a harder time to see smaller letters. If everybody's business was 700 plus feet back from the traffic, that would, like, okay, we can make it uniform like that. But not everybody's is. And so if you're trying to make things fair for businesses that want to advertise, maybe we do need to relook at our codes, our ordinances, but this is why we have variances, is because not everything fits every business. And this business is a ways back from where traffic's at, and it might be a hardship for them to be advertising to their audience if you force them to put a sign on there that's only 100 square feet. So I'd say let's maybe reconsider it. Instead of like today, approval, disapproval, it's like this is something I think maybe we want to think more on as a city when it comes to our sign ordinances. Because as this man brought up, aspect, the distance you away, the more that thing's going to shrink, and I think that ought to be considered when we bring forward things that like we're going to limit this area of a sign. Is how big is that letter when you're so far away? And maybe that's the way to bring about getting some uniformity to this, is how far away are you going to put that sign from where somebody can see it on a road? And maybe that should be something we consider when we figure out how big of a sign each business can have. Thank you.
Okay. Director Kanowski.
So just a few things. I think it's important to remember that Highway 10 is not the only street that you can see the signage from. There's Burlowski Road, which is about 260 feet from the entrance. So I think that's an important factor to consider as well. I think it's also important to remind ourselves that there is a multi-tenant sign that's going up on Highway 10. That's something we think the body should also consider. Third and final is we have already issued sign permits for 2 of the other tenants who are meeting the sign code requirement. So again, staff's recommendation is denial based on that information and what's included within the staff report. I, again, have a really tough time making policy on the fly. I don't think it's advisable. If you would rather postpone this to August and let staff work with the specific developer to come back with something that's a compromise or more reasonable, that's also an option that you have. But I think staff is relatively firm on the recommendation to deny because of that information.
Thank you, Director. I would also recommend that to the commission. If moving forward is something you want to do with this, let's change the ordinances or figure out a way to do this where we're not one-offing. So the motion before you is to approve. If that fails, we could then just take no action. It would be forwarded to council with no action. Council or Director Karnowski would bring it back, hopefully in August, for consideration of an ordinance change. So I'm going to call the vote. Again, if you're voting in favor of it, well, the motion is to approve. So if you are in favor of the motion, vote yes. Opposed, no. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed?
No.
Nay. Motion fails. We could take action, or we don't need to take action. I would recommend taking no action. And then staff, you can just bring it back next month. All right. Next up, we have Community Development Annual Department Report for 2022.
I think for the sake of being the 6th of July, I'm just going to state that it's within your packet. I want to give major kudos to, more specifically, Maria Moore, who spends a lot of time putting this information together and just slaps my signature on it. She's really done a nice job, and into the about 10 or 11 employees that we have within the Community Development Department that really make this community hum along. And so more than happy to answer any questions, but it is available online under the Community Development tab. So my recommendation would be to accept and place on file.
So moved.
Thank you. Okay, motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That is approved. If anybody wants to see that Community Development Department report, you go to stevenspoint.com, search for Community Development Annual Report, and it will pop up. Item number 7, discussion only, home occupation ordinance.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So as the commission recalls, last month we discussed really an initial conversation about our home occupation ordinance, taking into account recommendations, comments that were provided from the commission. Myself and Alder Shore worked on proposing amendments to the original proposal that was sent before you all. So in the agenda packet shows the amendments, and again, happy to take any questions or just hearing initial comments that the commission may have to help direct staff going forward.
Commissioners? The one thing that I jumped out is it says no substantial amount. Oops, actually changing your PowerPoint, sorry. No substantial amount. Define substantial.
That's our current iteration of our home occupation ordinance, and you're absolutely correct. My interpretation, if I define the word substantial, is going to be likely different than yours, which is one of the reasons why myself and Alder Shore were looking at doing
So we're going to have actual parameters.
Correct, to make
Nothing
it more
subjective.
Correct, to make it more objective.
The goal of the rewrite is to take the subjectivity out of the ordinance itself and try to make it as objective as possible, so that zoning administrator Kuhn likely won't be with the city forever. And the next person that comes through and is our zoning administrator may have a different interpretation. We try to take the gray out of the zoning code as much as possible, just because of differences in staff and professional personnel. So
great. And if anybody has comments or questions on this, Adam, who should they contact? Your office directly?
Correct.
You want to provide that phone number?
Yeah, 715-342-4158. That's my direct number.
All right. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I got maybe a couple, but I'm still trying to figure out, put into perspective how this comes into play with the accessory commercial units. And so if that, what was it, the 25% of the area, so that would be the main structure plus the accessory structure?
It would be the gross floor area that exists on the property, so you would count the floor area of the primary structure plus the accessory commercial unit. So whatever that total square footage would be of floor space, that 25% of that would be.
Right, so you're kind of looking at less than half of your accessory unit as being available for the commercial unit that it was built for? If they were both the same size, let's say, this accessory unit is the same as the original structure.
Yeah.
That gives you, then you could, take 25% from each, put 50% in the accessory.
You could state that under sub 11, add not exceed 25% of the habitable floor area of the primary dwelling unit, and that would allow, if you built an accessory commercial unit, you wouldn't have that 25% rule there. It would only apply to the primary dwelling unit, which is where we see the majority of these types of uses existing. So that would take your concern away about the ACU, correct?
Right. No, that's what I was thinking, because that came out last week, and I was questioning maybe 25% of the primary structure seems to be too little, but maybe not. I could see some reason to keeping it small, but then that the ACU issue came up, and it didn't make sense. Sure. And as it was explained, so yes, if that would be, but it says here, right, in the definition, I thought it said the principal structure and accessory structure, so maybe just nixing that second
accessory.
one.
Yeah, I think that's a good point of clarification. Thank you.
All right, good. And then the limitations, welding, I don't know. That seems to be something that, somebody could do in his garage and could get that done. Right. I don't know how much of a bother it would be. For the animal one, the boarding issue, how long is boarding? I'm thinking I got a neighbor who does dog training. I don't know if she actually boards them for much, but I'm glad to see that was changed from, nothing with animals would be allowed. And then the no more, you changed that to 2 employees from the 1. That was another thing that I was kind of wondering about, and maybe too limiting. 2 is better. I don't know how many would be enough, but I think 2 is better than 1. So I agree with the other changes that have gone on through here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Rice?
I was just going to bring up sub 7 there, I think is also just a little ambiguous, that there shall be no exterior evidence of the conduct of a home occupation. I mean, there's obviously a sub specifically stating signage. I think you could have that be just more specific and maybe just state something about the not allowing storage of the equipment, materials, merchandise, et cetera, as stated. And maybe there's in the exterior of the building, again, just to maybe some massaging of that language there as well.
Sure. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, comments from the audience?
I guess I gotta go first, huh? So there were a few things that were already covered, so I'm gonna just skip over those. There were quite a few changes. We met and had a great conversation before, and quite a few changes, and I'm starting to like what I'm seeing here. There's still provision here. Use of commercial vehicles for the delivery of materials to or from a premise, other than 1 vehicle if it is used by a resident of the dwelling unit. So it seems to say that you can't have an employee drive one of your vehicles. It sounds pretty restrictive. A little bit of a concern, it's like even just dropping a vehicle off at a mechanic's or something. Some of the milling, welding, a mill is, some mills at least, you're not talking about a very large machine. Many of them are about twice the size of that desk right there, and you can do quite a bit on it. It's not very noisy. It goes in a garage, and you can do an awful lot with it. And I know people who have those in their garage, and so that's a little bit of a concern, not specifically to me, but I think it restricts people who do that either as a hobby or maybe a side business. One person I know used to do a little bit in his garage after retirement. He's now no longer with us, but the section here that says service, repair, painting, vehicle including but not limited to. I see what you're going for there, because like an auto shop can be loud and paints can create a lot of fumes, but the way it's written, it might be construed to say that you can't work on your own vehicles, which I see that as a problem.
Only if it's a business. We're talking about home occupations, hobbies.
So like I own a few vehicles for my business, and it specifically excludes my business, so I guess I'm not necessarily affected by this, but I know people who are or would be. So if I own a vehicle for a business, does this, the way this is written, would I be able to change my own oil on these vehicles that I use for the business now? some rephrasing there, nothing too serious. I just kind of wanted to make just a quick statement that, you know, when we're doing this, we need to be really careful that we're not stifling innovation by restricting people. If we look through history, there's few things more American than inventing things in your garage. And this includes welding, machining. I see the some other things that were Henry Ford built his first vehicle in his parents' garage in the middle of the city. Alexander Bell, the telephone, first ever radio station was in a garage in Pittsburgh, I think. Home computer, as we all know. Eugene Stoner made the first AR-15, our current service rifle in the military and throughout most of the Western world was made in his garage. And that brings us back to gun and ammunition sales. A little rephrasing here. I think what you're looking for is to avoid, like, say, a storefront. But there's a lot of people who have personal FFLs, and it's just something to do background checks and transfers for friends and family. Maybe they make a little bit of ammunition for competitions for them and their friends, and it doesn't take up a lot of space. You're not dealing with a volume of hazardous material, but maybe a rephrasing, instead of specifying adult stores or gun or ammunition sales, maybe just say like a storefront with in-stock items or something like that, if that's what you're trying to avoid. I'll let someone else speak.
Thank you. Next.
I had time to prepare this time. Okay, according to the U.S. Small Business Association, 50% of small businesses begin in their home. The report also says that 60% of these businesses without staff are home-based. With 32.5 million small businesses, that means about 19 million are home-based. Wisconsin, unfortunately, ranks 47th among states for new entrepreneurs. The typical startup cost is $0 to $5,000, and women are more likely to have home-based businesses than men. And thus, when these regulations are being started or enforced, those women or those minorities are the ones that are also more impacted than many other people. So we need to relook at the information being presented here too, because the trend since the recession during COVID and post-COVID has been an increase in home-based businesses. The increase in professional home offices is negligible compared to this. The legal definition of a professional home office means the office or studio of a physician, surgeon, clergyman, architect, artist, engineer, attorney, or law or similar professional person located in the dwelling and is a principal practitioner, but not including any, oh, I forgot I was going to delete that. Customers utilizing these services offered in a professional home office also tend to visit these homes. A home office is different than a professional home office depending on the use, but can sometimes be the same. COVID created a boom for home offices due to telecommuting. Many places closed their professional offices temporarily, but post-COVID, they have reopened them. So there is not really a boom in home professional or professional home offices. It's more so with home occupations. What is the city using to define professional home offices versus home occupations? For tax purposes, a floral shop owner who runs a greenhouse on their property out of a separate unit would qualify for a home office deduction. So that's home office, even though that would be considered by point right now sort of as a home occupation. So how is everything getting defined here? And also, businesses change over time. So you might be starting out as one, you might then convert into another, and then back to what you were originally. But the point that I'm trying to make is that the city ordinance is dated, and if it is getting updated, it should be done the right way, in a way that benefits our community. It doesn't have to leave things up to interpretation that can change with each new staff member. It does not continue elitism based on education or career path chosen. A home occupation and a professional home office should abide by the same regulations, because both equally have an impact on a neighborhood if not appropriately regulated. So you have your accountant that has 1,000 people coming in during April and right before that into the home because they have a home professional office, and they can have a new door put on their house to make it easier to get into that room. However, per what is written here, if you have a home occupation, you can't put that same exact door in. However, if you put an addition onto your house and then put a door in with that addition, then you could use that door for your home occupation because you put an addition on a house, so it actually isn't a new door into the current structure. Roundabout way, yes. Or you can add a door to a sunroom and then decide not to use it as your sunroom and make it your home occupation. There's many ways around it. So when you're buying a house, you're building a house, you gotta look at the big picture. Things change. Don't overregulate just because of a use within a space that the city doesn't know what's going on in there, but they're deciding to overregulate it. So it has been stated that the three things taken into account when writing the draft were reduce the level of subjectivity of the current ordinances, tailor the ordinances so it is welcoming for future home-based businesses to help them start up and grow, and ensure home-based businesses operate in a way to retain the residential character of the neighborhood. I believe this drafted ordinance still falls short. So it is. Even in the stated differently section of the brochure, or of the agenda, 3, 5, and 6 are different and interpret what our current ordinance is differently. Because your building cannot be modified externally to accommodate the commercial use. Yes, it can be if it doesn't really impact the character of the neighborhood. And that should be allowed, because if somebody can build an addition onto their house for 3 new bedrooms, why can't somebody build an addition onto their house for a home occupation? We don't care about what's going on inside the house if you can't tell what's going inside of the house. And one of the requirements is you can't tell what's going on inside of the house for the outside. So why not increase your tax base and increase the property value by letting them build 3 bedrooms or a space for their home occupation? Because you're already regulating the 25% of space that can be used. So it's already covered there. Or you're just building bigger, but then you can still only have a certain amount of surface area has to be left for grass on the property. But there's many different things there. But I think that one of the things that needs to be considered in here too is that on-site sales was not addressed in here at all. It just has a number of people that you're allowing to be at the property at once. However, then also if you look at your zoning for R3, a conditional use permit, you can get one for a dance studio, but that doesn't state how many people you can have there. But if it's now a yoga studio, where if they're in R2, they could then have a yoga studio without a conditional use permit, because you can't do that in there. But R3, again, where like which one's going to be allowed, I guess? If you have a home occupation or a dance studio and you got your conditional use permit, can you only have 4 people then at the studio because you got the conditional use permit? Or is it home ordinance that's regulating this? Gets a bit confusing. But also one of the other things is number 9 now Individuals cannot control what type of vehicle is going to be making a delivery. USPS uses contractors to make some deliveries. They might not be using one of their normal trucks. They also contract with semis to make deliveries. If you order something online, I ordered a printer that's about this big, and instead of having it delivered by UPS, they decided to have it be delivered by UPS Freight. I had no control over that. Most people don't have control over that, but per this regulation, you can't have anything, a semi-trailer deliver anything, but UPS Freight uses a semi-trailer with a lift gate, but they might have one of their smaller trucks make the delivery. Consumers can't control that. So when you're having a business be being responsible to know what the shipping company is going to be deciding, it's impossible. You can't do that. Also, the use of the number 10, the vehicle. So I was wondering what commercial vehicles would be. What are you defining? Because if you have an employee that then uses their vehicle, or the employer purchases a vehicle that then that employee drives around, how does that come into play? Because only the owner of the company can drive the vehicle, again, and that was previously brought up. I do see that the appeals are offered. However, is this going to be like a conditional use? If approved for one person, the use then has to be approved for all people. If so, how will any of them be approved? Because deny is the thing that you like to do, because if you approve it for one person, you have to approve it for everybody. So how many people will immediately have to appeal because they're currently having a home occupation, but in the last meeting it was one of the questions was asked, so is anybody going to be grandfathered in? You can't grandfather anybody in because there's no tracking of current home occupations. There's the, across from the country club right now, there is a dog boarding place. That lot is not zoned appropriately for that boarding place. Also, that zoning doesn't allow you to even put in for a conditional use permit because a conditional use permit for that lot is not for boarding, and that's what they do. So are they going to have to close down right away? We don't have anything in place or any plan in place to be able to even consider the people that are already going to be impacted by this. So what I propose is that we really should be stopping the interpretation here and update this ordinance to 2023 standards, because we aren't. We're just writing something up. But our neighbors like Wausau, Cedarburg, Wisconsin Rapids, they all have a home occupation approval process, which you go in, you get charged a fee. You can make this mandatory or optional. But if you have a process, you're writing out what is or isn't allowed right here. And then it even says in there, the person coming in knows what to expect. Okay, wait, I was going to use 90% of my house for my business. I guess I can't because the regulation says 25%, and you have to draw out your floor plan and what space is going to be used for it. So then when your neighbor or busybody decides to put in a complaint about something that's going on there, it's like, oh, that part of the house isn't even being used. That's just air conditioner or something that's going on. And it makes it where it gives you the ability to grandfather things in too. So it's objective, and it can prevent this future subjectivity and costly legal battles with the city or for the homeowner. It allows the city to get home occupations and professional offices, both, keep them on the same page, registered. And what if somebody has an issue with the relationship with the homeowner? What if anybody does have an issue, then there's already a relationship built between the city and that individual that has that home occupation or professional office. So you're more likely to talk to somebody. And requiring proper business registration with the state, which is many times one of the requirements, means that the city is educating individuals about their business practice, or about business practices in general. Also, it gives the city taxes for the personal business property that's on that property. Not much revenue, but still a little bit. Plus, it gives out plus when somebody comes in, you can give out a small business packet with resources that would be beneficial, because we have lots of resources that people don't know about already for just general education, because you could be clueless when you're starting up your business.
Andrea, we're coming up
Okay.
on over 12 minutes. Are you able to wrap up, or
fine.
maybe submit the rest of your
Fine.
writing?
My writing stuff feels like it doesn't get read, but also remember that with a lot of these businesses, if you're a home business, you're registered, and you have an employee, you're going to end up having to get insurance too, and then you're going to fall under that, and many times fall under OSHA requirements too. So a lot of the things, sound regulations, you can put in how many decibels sound can be. This currently doesn't have any hours of operation either. Are you going to be allowing people to come over 24/7? That's something that having like a document written up that has to get approval, people know what's allowed. So you need to enable entrepreneurs to start home businesses, not regulate them out of existence. Be careful not to infringe on constitutional rights of residents to fully utilize their properties either. Home businesses should not operate in fear of their municipality or not get involved due to fear of retaliation. Many people, nobody is speaking up really about this unless you are already a known home occupation or professional office, in fear of being shut down and having to stop their business, and that's not right. And right now, I've been trying for the past 15 months to move my home occupation out of my house in fear of what's going on here. So now I'm just advocating for other home businesses or home occupations. This is not going to be impacting me, but I'm just showing up to try to advocate so nobody else ends up in a poor situation.
Thank you. Sir, last chance?
Yeah, I think most of it is
Yeah, I was going to say, it looked like you guys were collaborating pretty well, so if there's anything to add.
just like a couple things that haven't been covered, and I only quick read through this when I came in, but one thing that stood out immediately is on number 4, it says signage is permitted on the property, but then number 7 says there shall be no exterior evidence of the conduct of a business. So.
Fair point.
Okay. Going back to. And then also number 7 restricts the storage of heavy equipment, and I think that, well, that would put me out of business, basically. Being a pretty new business, I can't afford to rent a shop, and I would get shut down. I think that's about all I got for now.
Okay. Adam, you had a comment about the perceived conflict between 4 and 7?
Yeah, all what I'll say is, yeah, on its face, there seems to be. One thing I would note is, in our conversations in the past regarding signage, Reed v. Gilbert declared through the U.S. Supreme Court, I believe 5-6 years ago now, says we as a community, we can't regulate signage based off of content. So on its face, yes, it may be perceived that there's a conflict, but we legally can't regulate a sign based off of what type of message is being displayed on it.
Okay. Any other comments? Staff will take all of this back, sharpen the pencil again, throw some more red ink in the printer, and we'll give it another shot. Next up, May and April monthly reports.
Permits seem to be pretty much on par with where they have been historically in the last several years. Year-to-date fees is a little down, valuation is a little down, but number of permits is up, which continues to indicate that there's what I'll call smaller projects that are being pursued, water heaters, window replacements, roofing, as opposed to major commercial style projects. So nothing of concern there from city staff's perspective. Would recommend approval.
Okay. It's just a report, so we don't need to do that. We can accept the reports and place it on file. If you'd like to do that. Moved and seconded. Pete, second.
Thank you.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 9 is the director's report.
The citywide reevaluation is complete. Open book begins next week, July 10th through 12th, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the City Hall conference room.
I want to touch on that real quick because some people watching may not understand open book. The property values should have been sent to you in a letter. And if you disagree with those values, for whatever reason, provide documentation. An open book is an opportunity for you to contest the assessor's assessment of your property. You can also do it tomorrow by calling the assessor's office, telling them how you feel, providing whatever evidence you may have, and you can probably get some sort of resolution before open book, but open book is the legal process to do it. So you have several opportunities to contest the assessor's evaluation of your property. The first and easiest is going to be call the assessor's office, and they'll set up a time to work with you, see what you got, and maybe we're over or under. The next way would be that open book.
Followed by board review, which is the actual appeal process after open book. That's July 26th at 9 a.m., City Hall conference room. Personal property tax has actually been repealed, so that will take effect in the next fiscal year. That was a big deal through this last, through the state budget.
Signed it yesterday.
Yep. As the mayor pointed out, there's been a lot of recent bills signed into law that relates to land use, zoning, and housing development, including funding for additional housing. Staff is working on a full presentation to provide to the Plan Commission, to the council, just so that you folks are aware of what opportunities exist, what changes we need to make as part of our zoning code to meet the changes in state statute. The next comprehensive plan will be the far east side of the city, so essentially anything, I'll say east of I-39, far east side as opposed to near east side.
Out there.
We're out there.
Way far out there.
In the boondocks. And you'll see some items along the HH corridor included in that as well. Finally, Jimena Christensen celebrated 8 years of employment this week with the city of Stevens Point. She's our commercial building inspector. So that's all I have for that.
I need a motion to accept the director's report and place it on file.
So moved.
Okay. We'll give Pete the first, Commissioner Rice second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Agenda's exhausted. We are adjourned at 8:15.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.